All right, here we are. We're back for part 2 of webinar number 20, the keys to thriving. So we closed off part 1 at talking about how do we open the bubble, and we're toggling between game and dream. Now what we want to look at is how do we connect to source? And that is something in module 1, EED module 1, Revealing Essence, which we'll do in January, by the way. January, February, and March. We're going to offer it 3 times. That's one of the main techniques you learn in module 1 is how do you connect to the source energy, circulate it, and sustain it. All right. So, Shazor, I think you're going to like this. All right. So connecting to source energy. Before I mentioned, we can ask ourselves this question, despite everything that's going on, how am I okay? And then you'll experience a spark of resilience, a spark of energy there. Then capture that, ask yourself, what am I enjoying here? And how does that feed back to my well-being? Again, refer to webinar number 9 of 2020, Core Vitality and Resilient Well-Being. And we walk this in detail. We walk you through this in detail. So I'll fast track through it here so we can get on to other things. Another question you can ask yourself is, what is permanent and timeless within me? Or what can never be taken away? So now you got 3 questions to spark things up with. Despite all, how am I okay? And work with the first impulse. Go with the first, because the rest, you might start complicating it or negating it. Just go with the first thing, even if it's stupid. All right. What is permanent and timeless within me? Notice what that is. Again, go with it. Don't discount it. Or what can never be taken away. All right. Whatever pops up, then again, start to feed it. Feed your connection to it by asking, all right, what do I enjoy with that? Right? Don't judge it, accept it, become fascinated with it, start to, appreciate it, enjoy it, and engage it. So what am I enjoying in this? And how does this feed my well-being? That secures a connection with it, right? So that you're doing this back and forth with whatever it is, and you're starting to internalize it. Then you'll start to notice, what are the sensations I'm experiencing as I connect with this? That whatever the thought is, there's feelings that go along with it and body sensations. And then you'll start to discover maybe there's an emotion that's going along with this. It can start from an idea, but we want to engage the mind, the emotional level, the heart, and the body sensations, 3 together. I've got other webinars on how to create a congruent experience like that, mind, heart, body. So, and then you want to discover, well, what's the quality? What's the special quality in this? Maybe it's a strength, or maybe it's right down to an essential quality like love, unity, limitlessness, or peace. Or maybe it's more of a singular quality, like it could be just courage, or just simple well-being, or it could be just warmth would be a sensation, or electricity. It could be. But usually it's going to boil down into a quality of I'm at peace, I feel love, or I feel connected with everything, or I feel really creative, I feel whole. That's what I mean by quality, okay? Or I feel strong, or I feel like invincible. Those are other qualities. Or I feel joy, blissful. Then there's going to be a sensation, like I feel liquidy, or that quality feels liquidy or electric or fuzzy or warm or solid, right? It's got to be tangible, a tangible sensation. And then give it a location. Maybe you feel this watery feeling all over you, but where's the source and center of it? Oh, maybe it's in my heart, or in my solar plexus, or it's in my belly, or maybe it's right here in the middle of my forehead. Localize it. If it's moving and it's radiating outward, then here's a trick. Follow it outward and then play it backwards. Follow it backwards to where it begins. Where's the point of origin? What you're doing is then when you have that quality, that sensation, and that center, then you can start to focus there and just enjoy it and focus on how it feeds your well-being. Then you can allow it to move. You can start circulating it down to your feet, back up to the center, and then up to the head and back to the center. We spend a whole afternoon doing this. And there's specialized questions, a whole series and sequence of questions you can ask, or you can do to direct this, and lots of troubleshooting. But to be really simple is just allow this energy to move through you. Don't force it. Guide it to the feet. Let it move up to the head. Then you can expand it, and this is where it gets a little woo. Let it sink down into the earth and up to the sky. Now, it is a self-generating, self-perpetuating, and unconditional energy. That's an essential energy. So, for example, what wouldn't work is I feel trust. I trust everything. That's dependent on something. It's not self-perpetuating. It's not unconditional. Okay, because it depends on something else. I need something else in order to trust it. So ask one further question. Okay, I feel trust. What am I connected to that enables me to trust? What enables me to trust wholeheartedly? Or what is within me that enables me to trust? Because that puts me within myself in an unconditional self-generating and self-perpetuating state. Does that make sense? Well, I feel open and connected to everything. Oh my God, I feel unity, or I feel at one, or I just feel so interconnected. That's what enables me to trust. Or I just feel love, and no matter what, the love is just bursting everywhere. I'm just bursting with love. That's what enables me to trust. Or I feel limitless. I'm just limitless, and I see the potential in everything, like all potential. Wow. I can trust everything because I tap into its potential. Do you guys see how all these different essential qualities can lead to trust? So we want to know what's the source, and that's far more permanent. Does that make any sense to you guys? Okay. So here's the woo part. Let that energy extend down into the earth, because it's going to plug you in. And then let it come back in, and notice what the earth brings you, or what that energy is bringing back to you from the earth. And then let it extend up into the sky, let it spread out, and then it naturally comes back in. And then notice what you're receiving from the sky, from that energy. What's that is doing? You can, most people say, oh my God, I feel like a tree. Like I'm the trunk with the roots and the branches, right? The roots go down into the earth, the branches go out into the sky, and I'm the trunk. It puts them in an essential state where they become a vessel of energy, where this energy is now circulating, where they're letting go of their worries, stresses, anxieties, and toxins, and letting the earth take it. They're letting go of their toxins and letting it naturally evacuate into the earth. Then they're drawing up nutrients and vitality from the earth. So people will say, wow, I feel grounded, I'm drawing up wisdom, or I'm taking in nutrition, well-being, vitality, vital energy, whatever. A lot of people report the same thing. Then they can give all that energy up into the sky, share it, spread it, be generous. And then they're receiving back from the sky. It could be light, wisdom, inspiration, clarity. And that starts to circulate. What they're doing then is they're balancing out their energies. All right. Then they can begin to share it in relationship. And I'll show you that in the next slide. So again, I go through this in quite detail in webinar number 9, Core Vitality, Resent Wellbeing. And then there's a part 2 of it where I explain the 10 essential qualities. Questions here, or comments, or anything you're fascinated with? Yeah, go ahead, Shazor.
So when I first started doing this work, I couldn't feel energy in my body. Even my feelings, I couldn't access. So how do you then work with a client who has a similar issue and can't do that?
Ask them what they notice and let it be simple. And don't expect emotions. Go with body sensations.
Okay.
And even body posture and body movements. That is far more tangible. And then number 2, don't have them think it needs to be intense. Because they'll think, oh my God, I have to feel the heat of the fire, and it's not hot enough, right? Or they'll overwork it, because what they're trying to do is control the experience. Let it be natural and gentle. Again, if they're starting to work too hard, say, well, just notice what's happening and what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy? Enjoyment will simplify it. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And don't rush into emotional territory, because sometimes emotions get intellectualized and they are manipulated to feel intense, right? I've got other webinars on emotions, and I think I might do another one next year just on emotions and how to work with them. Emotions are actually appear from our actions. They are the side effect of an action, something we do under tension. All right, we create a tension and resistance for ourselves, and when we take action, emotion is the byproduct of it, and then that emotion becomes the fuel to move us further. So emotion is not a static state of being, and a lot of people mistake it for that. So when you notice them trying to produce anger or produce sadness or produce joy, they're manipulating themselves. What is it that's bringing you joy? Oh, it's that funny joke I heard. Let's listen to the joke again. Oh, what's it like when your belly shakes and you laugh? What do you enjoy in that physicalness? Then they'll get the byproduct of joy, bliss, and happiness instead of trying to force themselves into some kind of a fake laughter. Go to the trigger. The trigger was the joke, so tell it again, right? Don't say, be happier. Right? That's when we start manufacturing emotions. Actually, I think that'll be one of my webinars for next year's. I'll do that, working with emotions naturally.
Absolutely, because even sometimes I get very, very confused about what are feelings, like what am I supposed to do with them? Like
and I think they're overrated, and we start judging ourselves, or we judge each other because we're not feeling enough. It's not necessary to feel. It's naturally happening. It's more about, don't amplify the feeling, amplify your focus. That's why I say go to a body center with a sensation. Then you'll get a natural byproduct of the quality and how that feeds the well-being, and then it'll produce eventually a heightened state or emotion, right? So go with what's tangible, and that also helps those corporate types, let's say, that won't allow themselves to access these things, right? Because they also don't want to feel manipulated. That's one of the reasons why they resist, right?
Yes.
Because they understand that to get into emotional territory is to get into vulnerable territory. And corporate is a nasty minefield of manipulation. You have to remember that. So they're protecting themselves, all right? Doesn't have to be that way, but basically corporate is designed to be psychopathic. Because it's all designed to threaten the pathetic self, and so that everything can be well controlled, right? But it is possible, and I've got another webinar on that, and might do another one, is how we can actually put resilience back into the corporation so it can become an alive, vital, and thriving being instead of some dead entity that it's been designed to be. Okay, I digress. So just know, emotions in corporate are meant to manipulate. There. All right. That's why coaches have so much trouble with working with emotions in corporate. Okay. Work with energies and body sensations. That's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Now, once we've got that circulating nicely, we can get into essence to essence relationship with things around us and people, because we can start to send that energy that we're experiencing within ourselves. We can send that over to someone else as a gift, a generous gift. It's unconditional. This is inexhaustible, limitless energy. So just freely give it. What always happens when this, I call it the vertical loop, when it gets activated and charged up, they naturally want to give it away. It's a natural thing. It's like my cup is overflowing. I'm connected to an inexhaustible source. My cup overflows. Therefore, here, have all the liquid in the water that's coming out. And they just give it. The telltale sign is the person starts to talk about contribution. Oh my God, when I'm feeling this kind of quality or this kind of strength within myself, I am capable of doing something, sharing something, creating something. They move naturally into an act of generosity, which is contribution. So then they can give that energy or that creativity over. And it may be received or rejected by someone else. But when it is received and taken in, okay, in this dream state, then it activates their own loop, their own energies, and they can circulate. And then they're going to naturally give something else that got produced within them. And then this can be received. And this is how we get into essence to essence communication, because both are experiencing this vertical loop. And then the liquid, the water between the two cups, is passing back and forth. And it's changing colors as it goes from one vessel to the next, until what eventually happens, it all gets diluted into the same color, and it's all the same water. And we realize, I'm not the vessel, this cup or that cup. We're both the water. That's unity consciousness. We are water moving freely back and forth between two locations. That's where we get into this unified state of being, which is very, very, very easy and possible to facilitate, especially when doing conflict work. And people are amazed when they drop into this. However, will they stay there a long time? It depends on the facilitator, but they'll drop in here, and then once they drop into essence, they can stay in dream a little bit longer, and then it affects their game. And if you can sustain them in essence, and I've sustained people there for over 30 minutes, and they're like, this is a wild trip. And we've even put the brain paraphernalia on them and measured the brain waves and everything. And they get into this really this delta state, which means they should be fast asleep, but no, they're lucid and they're awake, but their brain waves are so slow and receptive. They're in this like state as if they've been meditating for 20 years, right? And that's what the essence to essence feeling is, right? It's if you're in a dream, it's underwater, you're really feeling each other's feelings, you're almost telepathic, because people are in such a unified state. Beautiful place to be in, but we can't live in there forever. But it's a place we can access as a source. Now, when you're working with somebody, again, let's go back to friends and enemies. Your enemy is capable of accessing that essence. Now, this is work we do in modules 2 and 3. Module 2 is embodying essence. Module 3 is conducting essence. We work with what are called endowments. I can endow my friend or my enemy with an essential quality. I can freely give that quality to them and see it circulating within them. It's going to change my perception and behavior towards them. So it's going to actually calm me down. So I open my bubble, and lo and behold, they actually start behaving that way, because they start mirroring what I'm giving them. Why? Because I've opened my bubble first, they start to open theirs, and they're being influenced. So it's what we call a positive endowment. If I give them a negative endowment, they're going to mirror that too. And then they start opposing me. And I've closed my bubble and sent them something that's incomplete, where they become a competitor to me or an enemy to me, and they will show up as my competitor and enemy. So there are negative endowments as well. So this is what, another way to call it is, how do you willfully project something onto somebody to be either productive or destructive? The negative endowment is going to create this oppositional game. The positive endowment is going to drop people into the dream bubble and eventually into essence to essence. How are you guys doing with this? This is work we do in modules 2 and 3. It's a little bit more advanced, but it's not that hard to do either. But suffice it to say, to bring it back to basics and simplicity, is activate your own vertical loop, and then you can experiment with giving that energy away and just see how it's received without expectation. As soon as you start putting conditions and expectations on it, you've closed your bubble and you've cut off the flow. Is that making sense? So there's an art to this. And that's why people come in and take the courses, because we train, and supervise, right? But of course you can do this on your own. But it's nicer when you do it with supervision. It's easier. Because then you have a mentor to work with. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to finish up with just to look at, we talked about brain. So how do we pull this together in just how our brain is working? And I know there's lots of people that love neuroscience, etc. Well, okay. So I'm addressing this in the neuroscience way. How do you translate this diagram of game, dream, source and map that onto the brain? Now, I teach a 3D brain, so it's more than what I'm showing you here, but I'm just showing you the two-dimensional brain here, which most neuroscience works with. So first, we have the left and the right hemispheres, all right? So the left hemisphere guards the right hemisphere. Why? Because the right hemisphere is operating from full acceptance. The right hemisphere is holistic. It takes everything to be true. So in fact, the right hemisphere is functioning as if it is at essence. The left hemisphere is acting as if it is in game. Why? It doesn't trust everything. It needs to test everything before it can let any information enter the right hemisphere. It's as if the right hemisphere is completely naive and the left hemisphere is completely critical and suspicious. Is that making sense? The left hemisphere is the guardian. Now, so why is that? Well, the right brain is holistic oriented. It sees the whole of everything. It thinks in circles, curves. It can do randomness, and it takes in chaos as a whole. Okay, it's timeless. There is no such thing as linear past, present, future. Again, it's holistic in time. It's extremely accepting and receptive because everything is true. And so this embodies what we could call a feminine kind of energy. Why feminine? And I've done a webinar earlier this year, Balancing Masculine and Feminine Energy, which you can go look at the YouTube channel. Feminine energy tends to work in curves and circles and is receptive, and it gestates things. So it's in a receiving place, okay? That's why we're calling this feminine energy, all right? Now, the left brain is going to guard and protect the right brain, all right? So it's the filter. The left brain is this little part. It's the judgment, okay? So it's particle oriented. It's ripping everything apart into separation, little dots and pixels and particles. It works in lines, it works in angles, squares, etc. It segments everything, even time, past, present, future. It goes moment to moment to moment to moment, all right? And it's critical. It's always active. It's poking holes in everything. This is a masculine energy. Masculine energy is about force, straight lines. It's going to invade, all right? So the two will work together. How can I read the letters on the page and make that into sentences? Because the left brain has pulled everything apart to separate the dots and the lines and the colors and all this to create the letters. And then the right brain starts pulling that together so I can turn letters into words and then into whole paragraphs, etc. Right? So the two are working together. All right. That's our left-right brain. Are we moving in dots and lines or in curves and circles? Are we moving in time segmented? Are we critically oriented, or are we in a holistic, timeless, receptive mode? All right. How you guys doing with that? Making sense? That's our left and right brain. Ideally, we want both to work together. Now, in the past, especially in the last 200 years, with the rise of intellectualism and the Industrial Revolution, all that, we've started to favor the left brain. That's logic. We started to move away from the right brain. Right brain is now coming back through, say, like Wu and New Age philosophy, etc., and then the left brain is getting villainized. But that's not good either, because we become too gullible and we become zombified, where we'll read a headline and believe it to be true just because they said it was true. So left brain is getting villainized. It's okay to criticize and ask a question and say, I wonder what the source of that article is and what their agenda is on that. We're not allowed to do that anymore. Why? Because it's favoring right brainness. Why? Because it's going to make us more receptive, all right, and naive. Do you understand? If I have control of your right brain, I have control of you. Is this making sense? Again, the keys to manipulation. Does anybody have issue with what I'm saying here, or is it making sense? Okay, now let's add in the upper and lower brain. You could call that the front and the back, or the higher mind and the lower mind. It doesn't matter. But what we're working with here is the more lucid higher mind, human brain, the frontal lobe, if you want to call it that. And then we have the amygdala, or the reptilian brain, but this is the lower animal ego programming, the reactive brain, all right? And in module 2, we pull apart the animal brain, the lower brain, into its specifics, where it's based upon polarity. It's that reptilian fight, flight, freeze, okay? But it's actually 5. We're going to flee from danger in search of safety. We're going to cling to safety and fight against the danger. Or we're going to freeze and not move, pretend that we're not here. And those are called shields, the freeze mode. And the freeze mode is actually divided into 4, where we can be disconnected, meaning numb, or we can be apathetic, meaning we don't let things affect us. We can be indifferent, or where we don't invest, or we can be in denial, where we pretend nothing's happening. Okay, those are 4 ways of freezing. Okay, so this is all module 2 work, where we like, how do you work with these polarities? This is constantly happening. So how do we take that control of that animal mind and have it work with the higher mind? Because again, you could say this is pathetic self, this is resilient self, where it's more lucid, it's resilient, it's fluid. All right. So, so we're actually working with the 4 quadrants of the brain in emergent essence dynamics, right? So the pathetic self, the game level, is operating on the left lower brain. Okay, that's getting favored, and they're aggravating each other. And then the resilient self, or dream level, is working with the upper right brain. All right, and that's where we're getting into dream level, and then we can drop into essence, where it's actually the whole brain and together, but it's dropping to the 3rd dimension, where we're actually dropping into the other body centers. We're having now coherence with the heart and the gut and the groin, and this is a whole body coherence. That's the 3rd dimension that neuroscience is not addressing enough. Okay, how does this is just brain function, but the brain then becomes the whole brain of the body. The brain marries itself to the whole brain of the body, is what the best way I could explain it. Where you've got, that's what the vertical loop is doing. It's creating coherence between all your body centers. They start aligning, they stop competing. That's what our module 4 is about, in transmuting essence, which is about how do you reconcile all these body centers together. I've got other webinars on that, and I'll probably do more in the future. But just to pull this together, this is survival mode, where we are dominated by our left and lower brain, and thriving, we're dominated by our upper right brain. However, to truly thrive, this is the master, the upper right brain, because it's the most lucid and resilient, and it can access the left and allow the left to be a guardian, but not to be rigid and closed. So we're going to toggle. So we're going to have all 4 active. That's true whole brain activity, right? All 4 quadrants are working together in harmony, and they're counterbalancing each other. All right. How you guys doing with this? What are your thoughts? It's 1/2 Bettina. So just,
thank you.
I know you said you had to go.
But
yes.
my client is still in a meeting, so she too.
Okay, excellent, great. Comments here from what you've seen here. Is this new, strange, or does it give you some insights or inspiration? Just to have some commentary here.
Well, yeah. So obviously, I know about the left brain and right brain, but I've never heard of it being classified as masculine energy and feminine energy, and it makes so much sense. And I think it's a great way to introduce the concept that we have both within us. That's right. to men and to women, because it's literally in your biology. So I really love this. Yeah.
This and that's why you might want to watch the Balancing Masculine and Feminine Energy webinar, because I'm taking the idea of masculine and feminine, or gender, out and away from identity, because that's what's tripping us up, is when we start associating gender with identity, right? We do possess both energies. We're hardwired to embody both energies, right? And it's not even about favoring it. It's about function. What am I functioning in right now? I'm in a masculine mode, or I'm in a feminine mode. And then I may have a physically feminine or masculine body. And if I want to surgically change that around, that's my business. But it doesn't mean that I can escape one energy or another. I still possess both. Yeah. Because it's the way I'm functioning and thinking. It's a level of consciousness. Great. Yeah. So if you have more to comment there, but I just wanted to add that in. This is not about identity. Okay. Now, it's about function. There's feminine function and masculine function. And if you look around nature, or you might also want to watch the 7 Hermetic Principles. That was from December 2020, applying the 7 Hermetic Principles. And the 7th principle states, everything is gender. Everything is masculine and feminine energy counterbalancing each other. And so this is what EED is embracing as well, right? And we work more with that in the advanced modules, less of that in the module 1, but yeah, it's there. Anna, did you have anything you wanted to say? I saw you nodding, or so just didn't know if you wanted to add anything in there.
I'm really just in a state where it all makes so perfectly sense to me that I feel so yeah, just peaceful kind of. I'm just sucking all the information in. So do not worry if I do not comment. I'm just really yeah, I just feel very satisfied right now.
Awesome. See, and then if I wanted to capture that energy within you, if I was coaching you or leading or facilitating, then I'd say, well, what are you enjoying right now in that peacefulness or that calm? How is that feeding back to you? Now, what are you connected with? What is it like to be that energy? What are you enjoying? How is that feeding you? And then, you know, it'll just grow. Those questions will amplify that energy. So even in that state you're in now, see, you're dropping into essence. I really don't need to ask a question. Don't really need to go anywhere or do anything. I'm just really in a state of enjoyment. That's essence. You can capture that, circulate that, and then start to notice what's the inherent strength or quality here. Note the body sensation and the body center. Then it becomes repeatable. You see, then you can shake it off and then you can reactivate it. You can shake it off and reactivate it. And the more you reactivate and repeat, you're actually building new neural pathways for that new pattern to happen. And then when you repeat with a little bit of variation or add a little bit of trouble, make it slightly more difficult to access for yourself, like throw a little trouble your way, stress yourself out a little bit and then return to it. Think of something not so pleasant and then return to it. You're actually strengthening it because it's like you're adding on a few more weights, and now it's starting to train with weights because it's still trying to reconstruct the same pathway, but with a little bit more weight to it, a little bit more trouble. This is what is not being taught enough as far as neuroscience goes. Yes, we have neuroplasticity, but we don't build our neuroplasticity in a perfectly safe and zen state. We can start it that way, but then we have to introduce a little bit of variation or trouble so it reconstructs under more and more dire circumstances. Then it becomes really, really, really plastic and resilient and strong. And that we teach in EED as well. That's how coaches need to build actions with their clients, is test out the new value, test out the new energy, the new mindset. Don't be afraid to throw a little bit of trouble once they've gotten the foundation of resilience. Now try to take away the resilience and see how they react, right? That's a cool technique that we teach. And it's not taught often anywhere else because a lot of coaches and leaders think, oh my God, thank God my client or my group found some kind of peace, calm, resilience, or creativity. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to ruin it. And if they then actually try to preserve it and don't want to hear the dissenting voices, what they're really doing is they're making it fragile. So they're endowing it with fragility. They've just created something resilient. Now they start endowing it with fragility, and then they're going to meet rebellion because now they're trying to create a safe space under false pretenses. True safety means you establish a foundation of resilience, you plug into that, you enjoy the unity, you preserve that until it's well plugged in. Then you test the safety, you break the trust, and you go back into the dream so they can do the repair work and reconstruct themselves. This is why it's okay if a baby falls when it's walking, because it needs to get up. If we never let the baby fall, it never builds muscles in its legs and body to balance itself. right? So it's the same thing when doing group facilitation. You build resilience and then you slowly have them test their own boundaries so they can rebuild their boundaries from a resilient state and realize we're not as fragile as we thought. So I actually can give you some criticism, but now I'm not criticizing to destroy you. I'm coming from resilience within myself. I'm coming from dream level myself. And now I can share the criticism with you, and it's not about attack. It is about create. That's the difference. And that becomes true safe space that is resilient, right? Then we don't have to preserve and hold as if it's something fragile. Because if you build safe space on false pretenses, it's always fragile, and then it'll get more and more breakable or susceptible to breakage, because it becomes infused with more and more microscopic identity. The identity keeps subdividing and subdividing and subdividing and subdividing to maintain this false pretense of safety. And then everyone is judging each other and censoring themselves. And then nobody feels safe anymore. And then what's going to happen is it will shatter and explode because it's moving on a polarity, moving to an extreme of extreme fragility. The fragility needs to break so it can put itself back together. Is this making sense? This is how identity politics are working, right? Again, identity politics need to leave identity alone and focus on resilience and universality first. Then, when we're plugged into a unity consciousness, we can now celebrate diversity. So bring the diversity in after the universality. Is that making sense? I see you guys are nodding. Again, I didn't expect to go here, but I'm on my soapbox. So any comments on that? And it's okay if you disagree, it's fine. All right, so let me go into summary. This is a rich part too. And then I'd love to hear what you are taking away as well. Feel free to interrupt at any time. So thriving begins with acceptance. That's key. Thriving begins with acceptance of what is. Doesn't mean I have to like it. It is what it is. All right. You're nodding your head. Whether I like that or not, the point is you're nodding your head. And that's the simple thing I begin with. So thriving begins with acceptance of what is, and then we can engage with source creativity through fascination and being generous with our fascination. When we are thriving, we create just because we can't. It's not because we fear annihilation. To be really blunt, when we're in survival mode, we only create and act and run around and do things because we fear death and annihilation. So what's the cure to that? Deal with your own death. Become okay with death. And then nobody can have a hold over you, because what you're doing is you're embracing that gap. Gap represents annihilation. It's that simple. Now imagine if we did that work as a whole planet. Let us embrace our own death so we're not running away from it like a pathetic self, but become a resilient self and say, yes, this is the part of who we are. Now let's just plug back into our source and create. Imagine how March 2020 would have been different if we didn't fear our own death. Just saying. Because we would have handled things differently. We would have been more lucid, not panicked. Okay, so to engage with co-creativity, we must be first and foremost, open. We have to open our bubble to engage with co-creativity and appreciate what is over there, what is being presented to us. We must take it in, all right? We can transmute our own reality when we are willing to be changed ourselves. Transformation doesn't happen unless I'm willing to transform first. And that's also a leadership concept. My group will not move or change unless I'm willing to take the first bullet. I cannot expect my group to go through some horrifying, terrifying change process if I'm not willing to go there myself. I actually need to show them the way. If I want my group to jump off a cliff, I got to do it first. Then they can follow. Is that making sense? Because unfair leadership means you go to war while I sit in my ivory tower and just, sign papers while you go and take all the bullets and risk getting killed. That is not good leadership. That is leadership not to be followed. Did you guys get my drift here? Okay. So that takes resilience in order to allow ourselves to be changed first. That is not a courageous act. It's just simple resilience. Why am I saying it's not courageous? Because we'll tend to say, look, I took the first bullet. Don't you admire me now? I'm now in a game of validation. So don't nobilize courage. Don't heroize courage. Just come from a resilient place and act resiliently. It's just we do what we do. That brings a little bit more humility in our co-creative process. Because as soon as I start heroizing myself, I'm back in the game. Because I'm starting to take high status, and I'm sorry, I've got a delivery coming here, so I might have to pause for a second. But I'm taking high status, and I'm starting to try to validate myself, and then I'm using you to validate me. Now I'm back in game. Okay. Resilience comes from source energy. It is permanent, timeless, and unconditional. Remember that. Okay, it's not like, oh, where's my resilience? It's always there. It's just a shift of focus. What is most permanent, timeless, and unconditional within me right now? None of that can be taken away. So it's always there. It's always available. It's innate within us. So, like I said earlier, whenever we feel threatened, just ask yourself, despite all that's going on, what is something that can never be taken away? And notice the spark of energy that comes up immediately. Or despite all this, how am I okay? How am I still okay? All right? That's a way to get in. And it will be a short, very short spark. So when we are thriving, there is an unconditional generosity, and we are co-creating. I'm not creating to gain. Okay, because if I'm doing that, I'm trying to control, and I'm back in the game. Okay, so to thrive is to be generous and to co-create. We're creating together because we can, and it's because we are of the same essence. It doesn't matter if we look different. We are made of the same substance. We're all fragments of that one unified mirror. Why did the mirror shatter? So it could look at itself. So we are all of the same essence in different places and perspectives, so we can enrich each other from all our different stories and identities and points of view. That's why we have story here. Now, hold on, I'll just pause for a second here. All right, we're back. I had to pause because I received a delivery. Yeah, just to finish the summary here. So thriving is actually a paradox. We are co-creating with resilience and a degree of humility, also with autonomy, but we are also cooperating. So we're fluid, but it's fluidity with iron will. That does not mean I'm passive and rolling over and doing everything you say. We are complementary to each other, so we actually can have opposing points of view, but we realize in that co-creative process, we need those opposing points of view so we can be fluid with it. And we're looking at an archetypal level beyond ourselves to say, if we are taking opposite sides, what are both sides creating together? What's holding them together? So if we've got hot and cold, what is the larger temperature available to us here? It's not about we have to be 300 degrees or 0 degrees. Does that make any sense? That's why it's a little tough concept to understand that when we are in co-creation, we're not rolling over and dying and giving our power over to somebody else. We both are claiming power and autonomy, but we're not coming from status, one's higher or lower or better, right? There is no status here, okay? It's a tough one to understand, but once you experience it, it's a thrilling place to be. Our brain is not hardwired for survival, fear, and reactivity. That's just a portion of our brain, and we get conditioned that way. So, like I said, we have an overinflated left brain. It's overinflated, and then the lower animal mind is also overinflated. That's through social conditioning, social engineering, whatever you want to call it. But we can counteract our reptilian instincts by reconnecting to source within, rather than constantly seeking an external source. So, if you find yourself saying, I don't know, where do I look? Start asking yourself, well, what do I know here? Start to get in that instead of constantly getting on the internet or reading an article or going on to Google. start to think for yourself. Start to think critically, to pull something apart and answer your own questions before deferring or referring to somebody else. That's how you can cultivate connecting to an inner source within you. We all possess wisdom. You have tons of life experience to draw upon. Stop asking for permission to be right. Because as soon as you start asking for permission to be right or okay, you're deferring power. You're plugging into an external source. It's okay to do that when you've thoroughly exhausted your own inner resources and say, yeah, I really don't know. I'm going to have to go ask an expert or take a course or find out, but I'll learn. Now, that's a resilient, creative way of thinking. But to just say, oh, I don't know how to do this, so I'll just, consult somebody and just act like they're the expert and authority. No, you're getting yourself into trouble by deferring power over to an external source. Stress, anxiety, and fear are aggravated by our natural feelings of disconnect, separateness, or emptiness. It is a natural phenomenon that our persona feels separate from essence because it's a personality. It is a separate identity. That's natural. So, but it's how do we master those feelings of disconnect, separateness, and emptiness? How do we even find appreciation in disconnect, separateness, and emptiness? So it is not a threat, but there is a useful function in it, all right? And then we must remind ourselves that we are all made of the same essential substance. Even though we appear to be diverse, it's an appearance. Diversity is an appearance. And it is a necessity because that brings richness. The more fragments we can subdivide into, the more dialogues we can have. But at the same time, we must remember we're all of the same substance anyways. It's that whole same substance trying to express itself from millions and millions of fragments in dialogue. That's the idea of diversity through unity. Finally, control, validation, and identity lead to separation, opposition, and divisiveness or divide. Even though it might reinforce our own story and make us feel safe and validated and in control and secure, remember, it divides. It aggravates separation and opposition. So if we don't want war, stop promoting individual stories and identities and make one better than the other. Get into dream. True safety is connection to source. That's it. Just build connection to source. And it starts from within. And that source we innately know and experience our permanence. When we're there, then we can outwardly reach to others and connect. Then we can connect source to source and appreciate each person's identity and point of view. So there's my summary. What are you guys taking away? I didn't realize it would be this rich and long. I thought, oh yeah, I can't even fill an hour. So how you guys doing with this? What's special that you take away from our time together here in the webinar? Yeah.
You somehow managed to do the impossible. I honestly didn't think these concepts could be weaved together in such a way that would make sense to somebody who wasn't meshed in spirituality, but it actually doesn't. It makes sense. Yeah, I have to agree with your prior participant. I'm sitting in fascination right now.
Awesome.
I'm just gonna stay here for a little bit.
Great. Well, enjoy it. Yeah. And enjoy that and enjoy how everything does pull together. Yeah. And it actually can be that simple. And when we come from that simplicity, then we're prepared for anything that's complex, as long as we stay grounded in that simplicity. So where you're at now is your core essence, core way of being. That's fundamental. And then you can find lots of variations beyond that. But this is a place of return. Think of it that way. That's what makes it easy. It's a place of return. Yeah, and recharge. Yeah, Melina, you wanted to say something?
Well, it's what I take is actually something that we discussed also in the last session, but somehow I missed it, the difference between curiosity and fascination. And I think it's very important also for myself to remember, because I I am the observer style, and because of that, it's difficult, to let myself with everything inside. And the other thing, which now looks different of what other, yeah, kind of core method I also learned is that of brain not being hardwired for survival. And it looks like there are two ways of thinking, and it's nothing in the end to to make the difference. It's just my more and more convictions. In fact, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that it matters how we use the two parts, left, right, how we combine them, how we intentfully actually apply to ourselves or in our skill as coaches.
Yes, and as human beings, it's very important to remember. And this works for typing systems as well. The last webinar I did was on the Enneagram, or even if you use, the Myers-Briggs, which has 16 types. But sure, I might think I'm hardwired for survival mindset. That's been built into my programming in my brain, but it doesn't mean I'm stuck there. I'm not boxed in there. Remember, there's a function, and I do have lucidity. That is my permanent timeless self. I am not my brain. My brain is a function, right?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And same with personality type. I might prefer this type, that type, but I'm not stuck there. I'm capable of being all types. Why? Because of essence. Essence is all potential. Okay, just because I'm playing, it's preposterous to think, oh, I'm playing a video game and I'm this avatar and that's all I am. And I forget that I'm the video game player. If I forget, see, that's another great metaphor for essence and identity. Identity is the avatar. Essence is the bigger player in the game there, right? I can fit into many avatars. This is also why I can have unity with everyone, because my essence is everyone. I've just chosen one avatar, one identity at a time. And if I want to talk reincarnation or, over millions and millions of years and living millions and millions of lifetimes, I'm going to be eventually every single one of those fragments, right? That's a spiritual concept, but I don't need to be spiritual to understand that, or I don't even need to believe it, because I can do that right now in this lifetime. I can move from persona to persona. That's my neuroplasticity, so to speak, right? I can practice that today. So yeah, don't buy into this is the brain, you are your brain and you are your type. It's a function. It's a helpful function.
Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that in. And I saw that you put in the chat earlier around a TED talk from this woman that suffered a stroke, and
something.
Yeah, her left brain shut down, or it got disconnected, and so she was only coming from right brain. So she got to viscerally experience right brain. It was a very confusing experience. She remembered it, but yes, and there have been experiments on left and right brain. Even the CIA did research into it. So, and you can look up those documents too. So, on what they found. Okay. Anyone else? What you take away? Or was there more to add there, Alina? Or was that good? And Shazor, you wanted to add something even more?
Yeah, I did. This actually brings up a question. In speaking about essence or source, how do you, for someone who doesn't believe in God, or actually believes in God, but believes God is an external being, not part of their identity, how do you bridge that? Just curious. Okay.
Yeah. This is a great question, and it might, maybe it's even called for another webinar, but again, we can use the idea of God, religion as an external source. Okay, so and religion can take advantage of that gap to make you worship it, right? So it's going to engage your pathetic self, right? And
Right.
we have another model that we use around the 8 circuits of consciousness that might also be interesting to you, because the 8th circuit is creator consciousness. The 7th circuit is about divine intelligence, but that's an external intelligence, like a higher cosmic intelligence. When we move into the 8th circuit, we're bringing that intelligence back within so that we are both the creator and the created. So for those who are religious, that would be God lives within me. But they're not allowed to say, I am God, because that's
Right.
considered to be arrogant.
Right.
Yet they could say, I am a vessel of the God energy, can help bridge that. Okay, so God will work through me. I am in union with God. I am not God as a separate external persona that somehow I'm going to meet, right? So, but I can have a union or a communion, let's say, with God. Now, for someone else who's not religious, so you have to be careful when
Got it.
religious people will get in touch with essence and they'll say, I'm in touch with God. Well, yes, you are, but you are also in communion with that divine energy. That's what to think about. Don't start externalizing it. It lives within. And we're a vessel to channel it through. Same thing with channeling. Oh my God, I'm channeling the angels and the alien presences. Not necessarily. This is just divine consciousness or higher consciousness or just essence. There's a wisdom and intelligence that does come through essence. Maybe I do have to do a separate webinar on this because I want to challenge and debunk all this channeling stuff too. Because again, that can be misused as a pathetic self looking for an external source. Oh, I'm in communion with the angel Michael or the Pleiadians or this alien, that alien, whatever. Maybe, but you're still coming from a pathetic self. You're able to be manipulated. Okay. Whether it's true or not, I don't know if it's a true entity or not, but we're in a manipulative state, a malleable state, right? So when we come from a resilient self, I'll get tons of creative inspiration. I'll be in that creator consciousness. I developed EED that way. I can't claim ownership of some things that came to me, but I worked with it and in a co-creative way, you know. And then there's things that I've borrowed, and I'm very clear on my sources where I'm getting this and that from. But then I adapt and I add and embellish. So I'm in this sort of co-creative consciousness, I'd rather say. For somebody who's not religious, you ask them, when you talk to yourself or think to yourself, who's the I of the I? Who's the, right? Who are you dialoguing with? You've got two versions of yourself. So which one of you feels more permanent? And oh, okay, I get it. There's an infinite awareness about you, right? What is the part of you that will survive beyond? If you say beyond death, you might get the atheist that says, yeah, well, it's just going to be all darkness and oblivion. I say, well, then are you going to be aware of that?
Right.
Nope, I'm going to shut off. Okay, well, until then, what's the part of you that is aware? Or for a transhumanist, what's the part of you that you think you can upload into a computer? That's going to be your essence as well, right? Where they think they can upload their consciousness. That's a whole other debate, but that's a way to bridge it. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Great. I'm going to do another webinar next week. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm just calling it the special year-end webinar because I just decided today I'm going to do it. But yeah, do one more. So feel free to sign up for that and join live. If I get great interactions from people, I'll post it. Some of these webinars I don't post, by the way, but this one I will. And in the year-end webinar, we'll see if we get participants. And then if you really want to learn this stuff in detail with supervision and spend, all our courses are 3-day intensives, or actually they're going to be 4-day intensives now because I've moved them online. I'm going to run module 1, Revealing Essence, January, February, and March. It's going to be the 3rd week. It's like 5 hours on Zoom per day. So, and then you're going to get another practicum or follow-up session a week or 2 later, where you can practice and apply all the skills you learn. It's basically 23-hour training, each module. And we've got modules 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's on the website, or you can I got the website in the next slide, but you can also, if you're interested or you want more information, just email me, info@essence-dynamics.com. This is great. You get 23 CCEs, Coach Continuing Education credits from the ICF, the International Coach Federation. So you do get accreditation for this stuff if you're a coach. But it's a great training. You'll learn everything about how to toggle between game and dream and do the vertical loop and get a taste of essence to essence communication, right? You're going to learn all those basics of how to get a resilient foundation. And if you only do that one module, that's great, because you've got basically all of this richness that you've learned here. You've got the basics of all of that in the first module. Then we get into more details on how does the left right brain work, the animal brain, the higher mind, all that. That's in module 2. Module 3 is how do we work with the 8 circuits of consciousness, which I did not discuss here, and how do we get into co-creation. And then module 4 is all about how do we take all of this together and get into solid action so that we are transmuting an idea into something solid. All right. And how do we transmute ourselves so that we truly are these vessels of resilience and co-creation. So that's a little nutshell there. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see all these webinars and the new ones that come out. You can find it Emergent Essence Dynamics or type in @EE Dynamics. And if you're on YouTube, you already found it. But subscribe, but I want to see likes and comments and all that kind of stuff too, because I love hearing the feedback. And check out the website, essence-dynamics.com. I have not opened registration yet for January. That's going to open in maybe a week or 2. But if you need to get an advance notice, email me. Or also on the info section on this on the YouTube here, you can get the you can subscribe to the mailing list. So, last words from anyone. I thank you for being here, and just any last words from you, what you appreciate or what you take away as final words. Namaste. All right. Thank you so much. I see something in the chat there. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Yeah. So I hope to see you again. Enjoy your own essence. Enjoy if you're in a zone right now, just enjoy that. Let it feed your well-being. Put some of these things to the test. Feel free to always write in with questions. But you know, and hopefully you'll join us next week or in a course or sometime in the future on another webinar next year. And in the meantime, be radiant, be resilient, be creative, and most of all, enjoy.